want to future-proof your brand and look ahead and consider consumer behavior and platforms and the evolution of how people consume content online, go all in on short-form vertical content. The beauty of it is, if you master that type of content, you can repurpose it for all these platforms and unlock performance on TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, and so on. So to master creative strategy, you have to understand the 3 key principles of it: research, ideation and execution, and iteration. So let's start with research, which is arguably the most important part of your creative strategy. So within research, you have 4 steps to develop research: the ad account audit, the audience research, the competitor landscape, and the trends research. Let's start with the ad account audit first. Why is this important? Because before you can decide and answer the question of what ads do I actually need to do, you need to understand the ad account, because no ad account is the same. You need to understand what has been tested, what worked and what didn't, and set your creative benchmarks. You can say, for example, a 1% plus CTR is good, a hook rate of 30% or more is good, but that's not necessarily true for every single ad account. If you have a very niche product, then you should be okay with a lower hook rate and a lower CTR, because your ad is doing the job of filtering through the audience and finding those people who it's really going to resonate with, and your conversion rates are going to be high. So understand what are the creative benchmarks that are important for you and that you're looking to improve for that specific ad account. So you can develop a creative strategy that's going to focus on these benchmarks. Then you have to understand the spend and the ad account structure. Now this matters because your level of spend will dictate the volume of creative and the cadence with which it needs to be tested. So your level of spend determines if you need a lot of ads to test, if you should be testing ads on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and also understanding the account structure makes a huge difference. Next step is your funnel and offer analysis. Understand where are these ads going to take people to. Is it product pages, collection pages? The ads you make for a quiz funnel are completely different than the ads that you make for a landing page that takes people straight to the product. Maybe it's a VSL, also a completely different type of creative, that one that takes people to a direct offer to buy the product. So understanding all of these first kind of sets the platform for you to develop your creative strategy. Next up is the audience research. So audience research should be fundamentally consumer-based psychology research. You need to understand who are the humans that are actually buying these products. What do they care about? What problems do they struggle with? What are their objections when buying these products? Because people don't buy the products you're selling, they buy the problem you solve and how it makes them feel when they buy it and using it. So it's really important to understand their pain points, their desires, and their objections. And you can do that by looking at customer reviews, whether you have a lot of customer reviews or you dive into your product category on Amazon, you dive through TikTok comments and Instagram comments to understand how people think about this specific problem that they're trying to solve. And Reddit is also a great wealth of information where you can find people going into really in-depth conversations about things. So also observe the language they use. This is key, and you should pull from that to write your scripts. So once you've identified these personas and you found out what are their motivators, their pain points, you plot that out. So this is where we formulate our creative hypotheses, because every ad creative is a hypothesis that needs to be tested. So you outline their motivator, you pick the specific product benefit that speaks to that pain point, and then you craft your hook and you assign it to an offer, and that becomes your creative concept. And that is going to be the brief that will inform the copywriting for your scripts, whether you're collaborating with content creators or influencers. This should be the core of how you brief whoever you work with to create the content for your ads. So next up, you've developed your creative concepts. Now it's time to understand the competitor landscape. Who are you going to be bidding against? This is really important, right? Because one mistake I see people make all the time is that they just open up Ads Manager or they open up Top Ads and they just assume that because an ad is running, it is working. That is not true. That is very far from the truth. Just because it's running doesn't mean it's working. And Top Ads is quite deceiving because the TikTok Top Ads are not really top ads. I've seen so many ads that I know for a fact are not performing still be listed on top ads. It's just their version of the ad library, right? So don't try to mimic the competition by just singling out specific ads and trying to copy them. Instead, get inspired, try to improve upon it, and add your spin to it. And try and understand the landscape from a more strategic, higher level perspective. So, trends research. This is key if you want to create ads that are going to work well on placements like TikTok and Reels, because these platforms rely on trends to literally exist. It's how people create content in them. The thing about trends is that they live and they die fast. So you don't really want to be chasing trends all the time. Our goal is always to deliver ads that are more evergreen and can scale and go through a large amount of spend over time. So you have to observe trends from, again, a higher level perspective. So if you think of, for example, like street interviews, comedy skits, ASMR, those kinds of all started as trends, but nowadays it's just how content is created and consumed in the platform. So when you're observing these trends, try to observe as well their creative execution strategy. So what kind of sounds do they use, what camera angles, what transitions, and try to infuse that in your creatives to make them feel as native as possible. So TikTok Creative Center is an amazing place to do this kind of research. So if you pull any country, this is for example France, you can do that for US, for any other country in the world. You have hashtags, songs, creators, and videos. Looking through these to understand how content is created under these specific categories, if there is a song that's trending, what kind of videos are people making to these songs, it can start to give you some ideas of ads to create. So there's actually a method in terms of how to use trends to make your ads. So first, find a trend, right? And you're gonna do that by scrolling on the For You page, searching hashtags, using the Creative Center like I just showed, or really just engaging with TikTok and looking through and understanding. So step one is identify the trend. Step two is isolate it and ask yourself, how does this relate to my product or the problem I'm solving? In what way? Is there a relevance around behavior? Is it a cultural relevance because it relates to the audience I'm targeting? Is it a psychological or emotional relevance? So kind of isolate what that variable is. And then choose a narrative. So what is the hook of the trend that you can use? And then create that narrative structure around it and decide, how am I going to place my product within that narrative? Okay, let's talk about ideation and execution now that you understand how to do your research and develop your concepts. So a few best practices that we live by. So when highlighting products on your ads, focusing at showing one at a time. Try to make one video for each product. That's because attention spans are short and you don't want to have to be writing these scripts that are trying to cram in as much information as you can on this one short video. If you have to, then include 3 products max, but only if they make sense. Only if they're part of a bundle or of a routine, then it's fine to include more than 1 to 3 products. Best practice number 2, clearly disclose the value. On TikTok specifically, users are quite price conscious, and we've seen that creatives that actually specifically highlight this is how much this costs, or it mentions the offer or whatever the promotion is going on at the time, at the very beginning tends to convert a lot better. So clearly disclose the value, not only on the CTA, but bring it to the front of the ad as well. And when it comes to talent, diversify. So a large portion of the top performing ads, especially in certain verticals like fashion, beauty, home, focus only on women. But split testing, the ages, the genders, the sizes, the accents actually make a huge difference. And it's a really easy way as well to help you scale. So if you found an ad that's working, you can take that script and literally just recreate it with as many different faces as you can, and it will allow you to resonate with different people. So the other one is 30 seconds is the sweet spot. So most top performing video ads are over 20 seconds, but they're never over 40 seconds. So try to craft your creatives to keep everything that's important under that 30-second mark. Now, creative diversification is key. I could not stress this enough. Creative is your targeting. Nowadays, with all the pixel-based targeting and lookalike audiences and interest-based audiences dying down, it's really all about going broad and letting the creative find your targeting. So what do I mean by creative diversification? Diversification in your creatives means so many different things. You can make creatives that are different because they target different stages of awareness, people that are just finding out about your product or people that are ready to buy. Maybe they focus on functional versus very emotional messaging, so highlighting your product's features or highlighting a promotion or speaking only to pain points, for example. Or it can be that your ad comes to your consumer from the brand's point of view or the customer's point of view. And also your tone of voice. Your ad can be funny, it can be educational, it can be motivational, it can be provocative, questions-based, it can be around a statistic, it can be empathetic or formal, etc. So all of these means different creative angles and approaches that you should be testing. So let's talk about creative analysis. So you've created your ads, you set them live in your ad account, and they've started running. How do you determine if an ad is working and why? And if an ad is not working, how do we go about fixing it? So these first two metrics, the first-second retention, which is the video play actions divided by impressions, is one that I always look at first. It's way more important than even your hook rates, because if they're not stopping to watch that first second, nothing else is going to happen. And you want that to be higher than 90%, right? So if that's lower than 90%, change your thumbnail or analyze frame by frame of that first second and see how you can make it more engaging. Then you have your hook rates, which is the 3-second views divided by impressions. And both of these metrics answer the question of, did it make them stop scrolling? Right? That's the objective of those first 3 seconds of the ad, is to make them stop scrolling and capture their attention. And then what happens after the hook? Did it retain them after the hook? Did you reward their attention? So you'll find that out by the hold rate. Did it hit that through play mark? More than 25% of people watch through the through play mark. Is the average watch time higher than 4 seconds? Average watch time is super important because these placements will reward you for having a higher watch time. If you're able to keep users in the platform watching for longer, you'll get lower CPMs and better placements. And then the waterfall rates. Where are users dropping off in the video? If you see a big drop off, go to that specific frame and try to fix that frame. And then, did it generate interest and actually make them want to buy? And that's determined by your click-through rates, your conversion rates, your CPA, and your ROAS. Then, let's talk about iteration strategies. So, spend does not equal reach. If you're a media buyer, you absolutely know that. You can scale your budgets as much as you want, but it does not mean you're going to reach more people. It means you're going to saturate your core audiences. And most learnings live on the actual creative. So if your creative is spending, it's scaling, but it's starting to show signs of creative fatigue, like performance is dropping over time, instead of pausing that ad, pour into that ad set variations of that creative to help you sustain that performance over time and fight creative fatigue. So that will allow you to squeeze as much profit as you can from that audience that is working. So the way to think about iterations is, when looking at the ad account, understanding how can I create more ads and variations of the concepts that are already working very well, that are resonating and are being delivered to an audience that's converting. How can I make more ads like that? But how can I take big creative swings and test completely different concepts that will help me unlock completely different audiences, so that you're not oversaturating that audience and you can continue to scale? And then having that cycle and understanding what is the cadence that your ad account needs, so that you're constantly refreshing it with creatives that will help you fight creative fatigue, because creative fatigue is very real, especially on TikTok and Reels.